gagged, which surprises us. This was inevitable, of course. Merle has prepared a response. In the book, I don't mention that I got married in my late teens. Didn't last, no big drama, but I'm using my married name. Sure, I'm around under my born name, but let's not complicate things. This is how I like it. Could be part of the marketing that I'm offline, off web. The agent wants a JPEG and some information about yourself other than what Merle Carberry wrote in her covering letter. Please give her our regards. So they remember her across the 20 years since they represented her on her second novel. We'll get a headshot organised. Best, Kyla. As soon as the message flies away, Merle switches her computer off. What on earth is she doing? Friday morning ritual. Take the twins to daycare, tidy their room and pack their stuff to put on the porch, ready for Herman, their father, to collect. Some weekends Jacinta would delay the tidying until Saturday or Sunday because it assuaged the pain of missing them. There were hours when she didn't know what to do with herself, wandering from room to room in an aimless, miserable fug. It happened less since she'd got together with Jasmine. Jaz believed in living in the moment, like a Buddhist or a dog. This weekend, starting with tonight, Jacinta would devote entirely to Jaz and being in the moment. As she tidied and mopped, threw away half-eaten sandwiches and went back and forth to the laundry and looked forward to seeing Jaz, she also, because she couldn't help it, thought back on yesterday's party, reflected on and relived it, which was not living in the moment at all. Nearly everyone she'd invited had come, some 20 adults and slightly fewer children, since children never went anywhere on their own now. Plus there were the hangers-on, like Merle, who had mostly sat with Herman, which was traitorous of her, but then she supposed he would have known no one other than his daughters and Jacinta. She even saw Merle pat his hand while they were singing Happy Birthday, all choked up and Jacinta's friend comforting him. She'd had a moment of pure jealousy. Why didn't he just put himself in the circle and join in the party properly? Sing along. Had she ever heard him sing, come to think about it? The kids had got high on honey and raced around on the polished concrete floor, and Jaz got there for half an hour, but it wasn't her scene, and fair enough. She wasn't that much into kids, and who could blame her, since she was only 18? Dairy-frees and celiacs were catered for, and at one point, Ray had said she was surprised she'd got it wrong. She never would have pegged Jacinta for a mother who was into organics. I don't believe in vaccination either, Jacinta had boasted. Yes, it had been a boast, although the twins had been vaccinated against her wishes and on the sly by Herman, since they'd been in shared custody. Guilt took hold as Jacinta paired socks from yesterday's washing and stuffed them into drawers. Maybe she should have organised the party a bit better, speeches or something. Nobody here really did introductions, as if introducing oneself was almost rude, so you were left in a kind of vacuum. She cheered herself up by remembering how Herman had seen her with her arm around Jaz. If they'd been introduced, he would have seen how she and Jaz were destined for one another, having almost the same name with only one letter difference, Jass and Jas. And what a relief that Gareth hadn't come to the party, even though Venice had invited him. She'd sent him the JPEG they'd made of the invitation, but so far hadn't even noticed he was a no-show. As in, why didn't Gareth come, Mummy? The question hadn't been asked. Out of sight, out of mind. Even for a 5-year-old who hadn't known many men. Gareth knew to stay away, knew that Jacinta couldn't stand the sight of him. What he didn't know, must never know, was how stupid she felt, how crass, how cruel. Cruel to Herman by busting it all up, and cruel to Gareth by punishing him for her own stupidity. She could see it now. Weird, sick shit going round and round until she'd come right with Jaz. It wasn't even as if she'd had to fight other women to get Gareth. They were hardly standing in line. And now he's single again, the famous writer. She was probably in his next novel. He wouldn't have been able to resist it. While she made her coffee, she checked for Herman before she went to sit at her table in the window to write. But she couldn't help going first to Facebook, where she saw to her astonishment that Adash wanted to be her friend. Less than a minute after she'd accepted him, he messaged her. "Heading your way in June for the festival. Would be good to catch up." Why would Adash want to see her? There hadn't been any connection between them when they were students. In fact, she caught him looking at her with acute distaste, even dislike. She messaged back, coolly, wondering if he got him mixed up with someone else. He was online still and replied graciously that no, he remembered her very clearly. "Where are you these days?" "Delhi, writing. You? Did you finish your novel?" "Same place." "No." "Still with Gareth? Have emailed and F-booked him, but no reply. Is he still around?" "Split up. Months ago." "Felt like a decade ago." "Oh, no. Sorry to hear." "Oh, don't worry, it's all good." "Sorry to bother you, Jacinta. Might see you around in June." And he was gone. What's he up to? Jacinta prickled with the beginning of outrage. Why does he want to speak to Gareth? Maybe he wants to queer the pitch, no pun intended, to influence the decision. Would he do that? She wouldn't put it past him. Bloody old Adash. Who would have thought he'd be the one to do it? Finish his book, sell it, get world famous. It was hard not to hate him. Gritting her teeth, she opened a file. pianistnovel.docs. Some of the many books and blogs she'd read on writing advised not to slog it, but to work on the part of the novel each day that appealed the most. Go where your heart is. She liked that idea. It made it seem less like work and more like play, even though it was actually work. Hardest work she'd ever done. Her life's work. But what a mess. She needed to read the whole thing yet again from beginning to end, because there were so many gaps and holes, odd leaps in plot and shifts in character. But it was one thing to identify them and quite another to fix them. Just breathe and get through it. Finish the novel and send it away to be published to great acclaim, or self-publish on the cloud, from which it will be sucked into millions of devices and make squillions, surely. There was a novel of her mother's that Jacinta had read in her teens, about a bad mother who sacrificed her relationship with her children for her art. Only she was a bad artist. The daughter was full of rage about it, and may not have been if her mother had been any good. Why did she remember that? It haunted her. Sleep. It was the only thing to do when she felt like this. Otherwise, she found herself going over and over all the things she'd done wrong, and the wrongs done to her ever since she met and married her first husband at 21, ever since she met Herman at 31 and married him, ever since the twins were born, ever since they migrated to the other side of the world, ever since she took her first breath, face it. Jacinta lay down on her bed and closed her eyes and thought about Jazz. Sweet little Jazz, whom she would see later. Jazz with her ready smile and youth and astonished listening ear. Jacinta giggled, feeling excited, anticipating the weekend. How could she not have known all this time that she was gay? If only Jazz was here now. No. Slow and deepen the breath. Sleep.
The Writers' Festival by Stephanie Johnson, read by Judith Gibson and Nigel Collins. Now, RNZ understands the Health Minister David Clark is about to announce his resignation at Parliament. We will cover this on the news and on 9 to noon afterwards. Also talking technology, parenting advice on reflective listening, and what to watch on the big and small screens.
Kia ora koutou. This morning I have formally tendered my resignation as Minister of Health, which has been accepted by the Prime Minister. Serving as Minister of Health has been an absolute privilege, particularly through these extraordinary last few months. It's no secret that health is a challenging portfolio. I have given it my all. But it has become increasingly clear to me that my continuation in the role is distracting from the government's overall response to COVID-19 and the global pandemic. You will recall that I offered my resignation during the Level 4 lockdown in response to mistakes I made in a personal capacity. The Prime Minister made it clear at the time that under normal circumstances she would have accepted that resignation, but she did not want significant disruption to the health system in the middle of an emergency response. I've always taken the view that the team must come first, and New Zealand's COVID response is simply too important in my view. So I've made the call that it is best for me to stand aside. We've now shifted to a more stable footing with no evidence of community transmission. With the focus shifting to containing the virus at the border, it is appropriate for me to move on. I could not be more impressed with how New Zealanders and our health system have responded to COVID-19. The response from health workers at the front line has been astonishing. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the medical, nursing and allied health workers who have kept us all safe by putting themselves in front at the front line. Alongside the sacrifices made by ordinary New Zealanders, the combined efforts of our health workforce have put us in a position that is the envy of the world. And I think the results do speak for themselves. In global terms, our low hospitalisation and mortality rate is a testament to the strength of our health system and its workers. Despite more than 80,000 tests in the last 2 weeks alone, we have no evidence of community transmission. The only cases we are identifying are at our borders. That is how the system is supposed to work. Because it has worked, we're now on a more stable footing. New Zealand's health system continues to build capacity to keep the virus at bay. Now is the right time to hand over the reins and move forward with new leadership. It's been a privilege to serve in this role and lead that work, and to lead the work to rebuild our public health system in particular. We've made record investments in funding for DHBs, record investments in capital spending to rebuild our rundown hospitals and health facilities. We've made doctors' visits cheaper for over 500,000 New Zealanders. We've made doctors' visits free for under 14s. We've made historic investments in our mental health services, including sorting pay for our mental health support workers. We've hired more than 2,000 more nurses and increased their pay. We've established the Cancer Control Agency, Te Ahu o Te Kahu. In managing the system, there are huge challenges, and these other things on top of those day-to-day challenges are significant achievements. It's been a busy but rewarding 3 years, and I leave the role proud of all we've achieved in that time. But it has not all been plain sailing, and I wish to put on record again that I take full responsibility for the decisions made and taken during my time as Minister of Health. Although ministers are generally advised against being publicly effusive about public servants, I want to put on record again that it has been an honour to work alongside the Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield. He is an exceptional public servant. Thank you, Ashley, and your team for the extraordinary work you have done for our country during our most serious health crisis in a century. The time is right to hand over to another minister to drive forward the changes proposed in the Health and Disability System Review, so ably led by Heather Simpson. It's my sincere hope that a re-elected Labour-led government will drive forward that agenda and that we continue to build a health service that is available and accessible to all New Zealanders, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, and no matter how deep their pockets. Before I take your questions, let me answer one of them in advance. With this decision comes the freedom to spend more time serving as a constituent MP. I remain committed to the Labour Party and to my electorate. So come the general election in September, I will be asking the people of Dunedin for their continued support to serve them as their local MP. Happy to take your questions now.
Can you confirm, Dr. Clark, that you were leaned on by wider people in the wider party to make the decision that you've made today?
I have made the decision myself, and I genuinely think that now is the right time. You'll recall I offered my resignation because of the mistakes I made in a personal capacity during the lockdown. That wasn't accepted at the time because, in the middle of a global emergency, that wasn't the time. Things have moved on. Things are on a more stable footing now. I feel that now is the right time because COVID is going to continue to come in to our borders, to hit our borders. The pandemic is raging, and it's so important that we get that response right. I don't want to be a distraction to that response.
David Clark, were you pushed?
No, the decision was mine. I believe now is the right time because we're going to continue to have this challenge and we're on a stable footing right now. And I don't want to be a distraction from that response.
How did that conversation play out? How did that conversation play out with the Prime Minister when you offered her your resignation?
Look, I think the Prime Minister understands why. She was very clear during the lockdown that she would have accepted my resignation in normal circumstances. She understands why I want to put the team first. I've always believed that the team is the most important thing here, and that the response puts us in a position which is the envy of the world. We don't need a distraction, and at the moment I'm concerned that I'm becoming a distraction.
By doing that,
She said that she was going to. Was that the nail in the coffin for you?
Say again, sorry?
Your remarks last week regarding Ashley Bloomfield, was that the nail in the coffin?
Look, I've always been really clear that I have a deep respect for Ashley Bloomfield. We have a good, warm working relationship. And I want to put on record again my thanks to him and all of the people in the Ministry of Health and across our wider public health service who've done an extraordinary job in the face of an unprecedented global pandemic.
I understand why the public last week may have interpreted your comments as throwing Ashley Bloomfield under the bus.
Look, I just want to be really clear about what I've said all the way through, which is that I regard him as an exceptional public servant. I've been very clear that I think he's been pivotal in New Zealand's response. We are in a position that is the envy of the world, and I want to hand over at a time when we're on a stable footing and make sure that there's not the distraction there, that we can carry on and continue this work, because it's incredibly important that we continue to preserve the position that New Zealanders have got us into through their sacrifices and through the hard work of our public servants and our health professionals.
You were just repeating what Ashley Bloomfield had said in the past, taking responsibility, and you were just highlighting that again. But when you watched that video, when you threw him under the bus, standing right beside him, when you watched that video, what went through your head?
Look, I've been really clear all along, and I think the important thing is the whole context of my admiration for his work. I continue to think Ashley Bloomfield is an exceptional public servant. I've frequently said that. I've said it again today, and I'm grateful for the work that he and his team have done as we've put ourselves in a position that is the envy of the world. I want that work to continue. We've been in a really unusual and extraordinary circumstance. New Zealand and our team of 5 million have done an extraordinary job. I want to make sure that we're on a stable platform going forward. I don't want to be a distraction from that response. I want to put the team first.
That was a kind
why
of
are you
key,
making
that
that
was a key
decision
distraction.
now? Why didn't you make this call when New Zealand got to 0 cases?
Look, for me, what I wanted to see was that transition through to a stable footing. Because I believe that that was the important thing. And that's indeed what the Prime Minister pointed to when she didn't accept my resignation when I first put it. She felt that in that situation we needed, in the middle of a response, a minister who knew the ins and outs of the portfolio. We've got to that position now. You'll see that there's going to be an exceptionally able minister appointed and taking things forward on a stable footing where COVID continues to be a big threat globally. It's going to be important that there are no distractions. I want to put the team first.
So you were planning to resign ever since you resigned the first time?
Look, of course, when I offered my resignation the first time, that was because I felt that was the appropriate thing to do, the honourable thing to do. I had made mistakes. I apologise very publicly for those mistakes. I offered my resignation. I understood why the Prime Minister felt it necessary for me to continue at that time. But now that we're on a stable footing, it feels appropriate for someone else to take the reins. I'll take a couple more questions.
Had you always intended to resign once the COVID response stabilised?
Look, I think we've been in a position of global uncertainty. It was my hope that we would get. It was my hope we'd get to a place in New Zealand where we were on a stable footing. I feel that we've got to that point, and so the time is right.
What sort of personal toll has this taken on you?
Look, of course, I have very mixed feelings about leaving the portfolio. I'm really proud of the progress we've made in terms of equity, in terms of taking mental health forward, a huge investment in the area, in terms of primary care and the path mapped out in the health and disability sector for care in the community, for rebuilding our public health services, putting that investment in to make sure all people can access high quality services. But I don't get now to be the person that drives forward that agenda. Of course, I have some personal regret about that. Equally, it's a mixed feeling because I will now get to spend more time working for the constituents, and I love being a constituent MP. The people of Dunedin are amazing people, and there is an opportunity in spending more time serving them. That I'll be asking for their support at the election, of course, to carry on in that role. And that is a real privilege that every MP in this place will acknowledge.
Are you staying in Cabinet?
Sorry?
Are you staying in Cabinet?
No, I'm resigning from my Cabinet roles.
Did the Prime Minister know it was always your intention to resign, given that you have admitted that you were simply waiting until the time was right?
Look, of course, when I offered my resignation and apologised for the things I'd done wrong in a personal capacity, that was a very genuine intention. And the situation
With the Prime Minister between then and now.
Look, we have had almost daily discussions with a global health pandemic happening, and of course along the way making sure our team response was going well and how that was playing out in terms of the wider understanding of things. Of course, we had some conversations, but I've made this choice because I think the time is right. I'm going to leave things there, and I just want to say thank you for your questions and the opportunity just to communicate why it's important now for me to move to let somebody else take the reins. I am very proud of the work that I've done during my time as Minister.
Chris Hipkins.
Thank you.